Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show. And this episode is brought to you by me and my guest, Willow Reichelt.
Thank you for having me, Nancy.
You're welcome. I did pronounce your last name.
You
right?
did, yes.
Gosh, I remembered. I remembered. Now, you are currently a school board trustee.
Yeah, I'm the vice chair of the Chilliwack School Board currently, and I'm running for re-election.
No, that's a 4-year term. Right?
Yes, that's
And the election is coming up on October 15th.
October 15th.
So, having been on there for 4 years, what do you think worked well and what didn't work well?
Well, I think that we've had just really great staff in our district. So the superintendent and the district admin team, and then all of our teachers and principals are just fantastic. And they're really moving forward. We have a great strategic plan that really focuses on academics and also social emotional wellness, and acknowledges systemic discrimination that some students have faced, and commits to moving forward with reconciliation and anti-racism and stuff like that. So, I mean, it's really awesome.
Good.
So we've done a lot of good work. Obviously, the majority of the board has supported all of those initiatives.
Mm-hmm.
We have been held back by having members on the board who are in opposition to all of the good work that basically we're trying to do. So that's been a challenge, but you know, we're still doing work. Yes,
it is what it is. Okay, so now, assuming you get re-elected, which I hope you do, am I allowed to? Yes, I'm allowed to put in my point of view. It's my show. Anyway, so moving forward, is there something you think you can do differently?
Well, I'm really hoping that Chilliwack voters understand the stakes in this election, and that they come out, they elect people who actually understand the modern education system. They understand that teaching has changed since the 1950s, and that we have different goals than we used to have. You know, when you have the entire internet in your pocket, focusing on things like rote learning is less important because you can look stuff up. So the new way that we teach is more about teaching big ideas and teaching kids how to find information, how to synthesize information and that kind of stuff.
Right.
And, you know, we have a human rights code in BC and it's binding on school districts. So the fact that there's people who are running who are actually trying to fight against the basic human rights of some of our citizens is gross. And
it makes no sense.
Yeah, exactly. They wouldn't be able to do what they're trying to say that they want to do. So I'm not sure why you would run for school trustee on a platform that is contrary to everything that we actually do. So
pretty interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, so I'm just really hoping, I really believe when I walk around this town, people are lovely. People are great. Everyone wants to have a school where that just functions. People want kids to feel safe at school.
Yes.
I mean, and you know, there's a bit of a false narrative, I think, that it's like religious versus non-religious people that this fight is between, and that's just not true. There's so many wonderful, inclusive, loving people of faith that include everybody, and I think that that's really important to point out, because I think that there's a certain side that tries to say that what they're doing is based on their religious values, and I'm sorry, hate isn't a religious values.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's important too when you're, anytime you're on a council or committee or anything like that, that you should not force your views or try to, like I watched The View, and on there is one of the women who's who's pro-life.
Right.
But she said she doesn't feel she has the right to tell me or you or anybody else that they should be pro-life.
Right.
That's her own personal decision.
Yeah.
So that's the way I think that would be the best way to approach anything when you're on like something, you know, that especially the school board.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting. Like, I mean, obviously my views are in line with the ministry and with, you know, the curriculum and stuff like that. But, you know, sometimes if something does come to the board that's not in my wheelhouse, like for example, when we were renaming a sports field, I'm not sporty, don't really care about sports that much, but you know, I could tell that the people bringing it forward really were passionate. They really cared. They put all this work into this, you know, getting the football program up, and I have to put my feelings about not caring about sports aside, and I have to like listen to them and do what's best for all kids, because there's lots of kids that really love sports, and that's really important. So even if it's not my thing, you know, so I think that's an example of how it's not just your own beliefs that you're fighting for. The school board, it's everybody's, right? I've
already interviewed Margaret Reed, who I know is running also, and I will be interviewing others. And one of the things I told Margaret is I find that this election is so exciting compared to I can't even remember the last time I got excited for any kind of election, especially this kind. Yeah. But because I see the names of the people who are running or the names that are running again, I think if that moves forward with my views, mine are very similar to yours. I can see how it's such a wonderful benefit to everybody,
Yeah,
right?
I agree. I mean, honestly, David and Karen and I are rerunning, and we are just passionate about education.
Yes.
David is so into policy, and he's really taken it upon himself to go to BCSTA, and like he's part of the legislative committee for the BC School Trustees Association,
Okay.
which is they get all the motions that go to our annual general meeting, and they make sure that they make sense and that they are appropriate. And he's really involved with that. He's so committed to, you know, the real hard, sometimes boring work of the board, right?
Yes.
And then Karen Bondar she has a PhD in biology.
Absolutely.
She's a science communicator. Like, how did we even get someone that qualified on our local school board?
Right.
And then I, of course, have a background in education. And then we have, you know, Margaret and Terry, who are community minded people
So
who've
much
done
so.
so much in our community. They're out there really just working to make our town better. And I just think, what an amazing group of people.
Mm.
And then we do have a couple other people that I don't know personally, but that seem good. Like Brian Van Garderen is a teacher in Abbotsford, and he seems to have views that are very compatible with what the board's trying to do. Greg Nelms was an educator as well. Actually, I think he still does teach.
Okay.
So, I mean, they seem good. I don't know them, so I can't, I'm not as like, you know, invested in them, but they seem great too. So we really do have a choice of 7 people that could really move this district forward. So I'm really hoping that Chilliwack realizes that.
And it's important. I'm trying to, how do you get that message across to people my age?
Yeah.
You know, you don't have grandchildren, well, in my case would be great grandchildren in the school, but it's still very important for us to vote.
Yeah, well, I was just at a market. I did a little table with my campaign stuff.
Cool.
Last weekend, I think. And then, you know, I had a couple women come up and they said, oh, we don't have kids in school anymore. And I told them, I said, public education is important to everybody.
Yeah.
Every single person in this country has a stake in having educated citizens. We want doctors who are educated. We want lawyers who are educated. We want tradespeople who, you know, can build a house without it falling down. We want all of those things. We want to have everybody be educated. We also want our citizens to be able to engage in political discourse, able to read and think and understand. We do have a real problem in society right now with misinformation online, for example.
Absolutely. And anybody can post anything.
Exactly. Right? So, I mean, we have to raise citizens who can recognize fake news essentially and understand when they're being manipulated. And I think, you know, that is an issue with a lot of people right now.
One of the things I like, in my opinion, when I see somebody who was rerunning whatever, and they're so negative about most of the thing, I think it might have the opposite effect. Like, you know, that they might not get elected because they're so negative about all the things that move us forward as citizens, as a city, which is, and Chilliwack, since I've been here, and I'm sure you agree, it has changed so much.
Yes.
And I would say in the last 4 years, even more so.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, I guess I really try to empathize with everybody's opinion. I really try to put myself into people's headspace so I can understand where they're coming from. But I must confess that it's a little bit confusing to me that anyone can think that the world's getting worse. Like, I mean, obviously there's big issues like climate change and, you know, there's unrest and all that stuff. But in general, the world, like our country, is better for almost all people than it was 50 years ago. If you're a woman, you have more rights now than you did 50 years ago. If you're a person of color, you have far more rights. If you're gay, you can get married now. Like, you know, you couldn't even be out in public without fear of getting beaten up when, like, you know, 30 years ago even, right? So, like, to be a person who looks at our society now and thinks, wow, all of this is bad. I wish people could still be discriminated against. Like, what is that? I have a hard time with that, but
justify what you're saying, right? How bad? You know, because I hear people talk about, I know we're off topic a little bit, but when I hear about somebody saying that gay marriage are going to ruin family life, and I think, how? if gays have rights, and I spoke to Margaret about this, now we're all going to turn gay. Like, there's no logic to it, right?
Exactly. Well, I just find it so funny. So if you told me like 6 years ago that I was going to be an LGBTQ activist, it would have been funny to me, because I mean, I had gay friends and family members, but I'm straight. Like, I'm married to my high school sweetheart. And it's actually kind of funny because if on paper, I should be like right up the certain slate's alley, because I like married my high school sweetheart. You know, I've been married for 30 years. I stayed home with my kids mostly when they were young, like, you know, but when I see bigotry, I fight against it, even if I don't belong to that group, right? And so, and I don't understand how people loving each other affects my marriage.
It doesn't. That's the whole point. That's the whole exact, like I'm again, I'm on the same wavelength, you know. A lot, I know, I understand a lot of people my age don't quite understand a lot of this stuff because they're just, I don't know, I'm not sure why.
Yeah.
Okay, but it's like I'm like you. Look, I have a son who's married to a Chinese girl, lives in China. I think that's wonderful. And you know, we have gays, we have transgender, whatever in my family. So what?
Yeah.
They're still my family
Exactly.
and who I love. And as long as they're a good person, that's the bottom line.
Yeah. Well, and you know, we know that it's actually lack of familiarity that breeds a lot of distrust and hatred, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of people who are especially riled up about transgender people just have never met a trans person in real life. Exactly. Like,
meeting.
well, and it's so funny because like I actually hadn't really met a transgender person in real life when I first said what a certain person said is absolutely horrible. We need to fight against this. And now I know lots of people who are transgender because obviously I'm a safe person to be around. And shockingly, they're all different from each other. I mean, obviously, right? I mean, I think this idea that you can tell everything about a person from one characteristic is so ridiculous. I mean, you met one transgender person, you've met one transgender person. That's all you know about them, right?
Anytime you know any group of people, whatever it is, right?
Exactly.
It just makes no sense, you know. And like again, we have access to, you know, I watched a show, I Am Jazz, which is about transgender, and that probably was my first contact with knowing about it. And then they showed videos, the parents showed videos of Jazz when Jazz was really little, and always knew that they were in the wrong body, you know. So I know that we live in a society where some people think we're teaching our children that. How can you know, like eventually it's when they're going to realize, like as teenagers, whatever, like that. Oh my gosh, my parents made me be transgender. You know.
Well, I mean, the funny thing is, if it was true that you could just brainwash people, there'd be no gay people.
Exactly.
Because there was no positive portrayal of gay people until very recently, and people still turned out gay. Like they're, you know, they didn't get brainwashed into being straight, and we know, for example, conversion therapy is just torture. It doesn't work, torture, and it's horrible. And I'm so glad that the government.
Yeah, me too. and you know, we know that gay children come from straight families.
Exactly.
And there's another issue. I know we're getting off topic about the school board, but it is a broad subject, and it needs to be, all of it needs to be brought in. Like the same with like pro-life or like I believe in choice, and I have a strong opinion about pro-lifers. This is gonna sound, I don't know how it sounds to you. I always think, what right do you have to sentence a child to life? You don't know, you cannot guarantee that child a good life. So who are you to determine that? And it's always always to the female. So you don't want all these babies, and have a vasectomy. Period.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm firmly, obviously, pro-choice. I think that reproductive freedom is essential. If we have, in order to achieve gender equality, you cannot have an equal society if someone is forced to carry a pregnancy that they don't want to carry. And that's just reality. And I also believe in choice, though. So if someone doesn't believe in abortion, they shouldn't get one. Like, absolutely, like don't get one. But
it's their choice.
Exactly.
So I brought years ago, somebody said to me, I had that argument with somebody, and they said to me, well, where would you be if you had been aborted? And it's like, I looked at them like, you answer such an insane question.
Yeah. I mean, it's, it's not really a valid argument. I agree. I did want to just circle back a little bit to the school board. I love this discussion. I just want to say, I think that what happens, this is a great discussion, and I'm super excited just to talk about, you know, the fact that our society is moving forward and everything. But I also want to point out some of these issues that we're talking about. People accuse me of being this extremist on the left. And honestly, I wouldn't be talking about gay rights all the time if there weren't 3 people on the board fighting against them, because human rights code. It's the charter. Like, those aren't issues that are coming up. We're trying to focus on student achievement. We're trying to move forward with, you know, new programs and services in our district, like why is this the topic we're even talking about? Although I'm happy to talk about it and I love all of my diverse and wonderful friends, but the fact that that is what we're talking about is bizarre. Like
it's not what your job is.
Exactly.
Right? Your role is not to do that.
Exactly.
It is kind of interesting. Do you have a theory about why they do that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that they care about public education. At least some of them don't. What they care about is imposing their very narrow worldview on all of society.
Are they winning? Then why are they there? Like, I don't get that.
Yeah.
You know, you're not going to change other people. You can't change other people's opinion that way.
Yeah.
You know, that's not how it's done, right? I mean, it's through education, it's through, like you said, you know, talk to somebody who's transgender, talk to somebody who's blind, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And that's when you learn things, and that's when you have your mind open a little bit.
Yeah.
But not trying to force your views on somebody who, when does that ever work? You know?
I don't know.
I mean, you have to wonder what they're getting something out of it, otherwise they wouldn't be there.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there is a segment of our population that really likes what they're saying. I mean, I think it's unfortunate. I think I really would love to see a day where, you know, being conservative means what it used to mean, which is like small government, like low taxes and whatever. And you know, I believe in a social safety net, so that I'm not really into those kind of conservative values either, but I could easily be friends with someone who's small c conservative and just like, you know, thinks government should be very small, and like that's what it used to mean.
Sure.
This social conservatism, which is like hatred, is not, I don't like, we just can't tolerate that. You can't tolerate hatred in a tolerant society, because if you let those ideas flourish, they grow, right? So yeah, I think it's really unfortunate. Because I want to get to a point where everyone acknowledges human rights are just they're just a thing. Like that's not a thing we debate. We can debate all sorts of other stuff. We can disagree and we can, you know, have a passionate argument and then go out for coffee afterwards. But I can't agree to disagree over my friends and family members' human rights. It's not a thing I can agree to disagree on. Sorry, they have rights. You don't get to say those horrible things you're saying. So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
No, there's another issue, book banning.
Yes.
Right? Which is a really important topic.
Yeah.
I mean, why would anybody want to ban a book? What is their reasoning?
Well, so I've been following this issue. My husband's a teacher librarian, as you know, so he follows a lot of teacher librarians from the States on social media. And so this is a very concerted right-wing effort to go after LGBTQ people and people of color. It's very obvious that they're targeting BIPOC authors and LGBTQ authors. And so it's coming from the States and it's coming up to Canada. The books they're going after are the same ones they're going after in the States. So it's a political agenda. They claim that they're protecting children, but it has literally nothing to do with that. And well, you know, now they're starting, because I've been saying that, now they found some books that are naughty that aren't about gay people, but it's very transparent what they're doing. And I, as a reader, find it very bizarre that you would focus on preventing children from reading instead of fostering a love of reading. It doesn't make any sense. And the idea that teens can never read anything with sex in it, when that is basically what they're thinking about 90% of the time, it's pretty funny to me.
And if they're not finding it in the schools or in the libraries, they can go online.
Exactly.
Hello. And all the teenagers are online.
Yeah. And you know, the thing, I don't know if you saw a post I did recently, but it was about me reading when I was a kid.
Yes, I did see that.
Yeah. And so there really wasn't much YA literature, young adult literature, when I was a kid. There was a little bit, but it was kind of a little subgenre. The books weren't very good quality and they were very formulaic kind of. And so I read some of them when I was like 12, and I read basically all of them and I was done. I was like, okay, what do I read now? So then I had to read adult books. And so some of the stuff I read was pretty wild, whatever, but my mom talked to me about it. And then now though, YA literature is available and it's so good. Like I read it now even. It's really just very well written and really interesting topics, really sometimes like more experimental and interesting than adult books. So I really like it. But the thing about YA literature is some of it does have sexual content, but it's not being written to turn the kids on. Yeah. The way an adult book is written for that reason. Sometimes it's a little bit erotic for adults, whatever, it's for adults. But when teen literature is written, it's written to help kids process their feelings. And so it's quite discouraging to me to see people who obviously, by the way, don't read, going after these books. So I'm like, okay, well, I was reading the Clan of the Cave Bear series, which is
love
yes,
that.
but it's you know, when you're 12, it's a
Yeah.
little
Well, I don't know what kind of- when I was 12.
so anyway, but you know, I was reading that and I survived and I became like a literate and you
Yeah.
know, passionate reader, whatever. But you know, these books are not like that. They're not erotica.
Yeah.
They're written for teens.
In a way
Yes.
that gears it towards what they want the kids to know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I mean, if you ban all the teen books from the library, they're just, I guess they're gonna have to go find adult books at the bookstore.
You know,
Or find the same exact books you banned at the public library. I mean, what's the point of it all?
there's no sense to it. You know, my
Yeah.
son and I read the same books a lot of the time,
Yeah.
you know, and starting when he was 10, he was an avid reader.
Yeah.
And I never thought of, oh, you can't read this.
No.
I just never, of course, I would read his books too, because, you know, he liked a lot of those fantasy books and I
Yeah.
loved them. They
Yeah,
were
yeah.
so much fun. But it just never dawned on me. I mean, I know if somebody's like 4 or 5 years old, you're not going to give them a book that's very wordy.
Yeah.
Like the Clan of Care Bears. I mean, Care Bears. There you go. Because it just, there's no understanding
Yeah,
at that age,
exactly.
right? But once, depending on your children, I think you know your children well enough to know
Yeah.
at what age is a good age to introduce them to whatever book it is. If my son went to the library and brought home a book, I wouldn't say, well, you can't read that, take that back. It was a book he would be interested in.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's the thing. And if you're an involved parent, you can take a little flip and, you know, like my mom did when after she read the Clan of the Cave Bear, after I'd read them, she was like, oh my goodness. And then we had a talk
Yeah.
and whatever, right? Yeah, I just find it so fascinating. This whole, I mean, I grew up understanding that only fascists ban books.
Yeah,
Like that is a
that's true.
fascist tactic. And I can't believe that we're fighting this now. It seems so bizarre to me that it's even coming up, but obviously I'm fighting strongly against it because I'm a reader for
It's
one
not
thing.
right. It's
Yeah,
just-
it's not right. And also I'm a reader. Like
Yeah,
I read
yeah.
so many, you should see, my house is a bit ridiculous how many books I have in it, honestly.
I used to be like that. It's slowed down tremendously.
Yeah, I mean, I read and I read all sorts of things and I read novels, I read nonfiction.
Yeah.
When I hear about something controversial, I'll read that to see if I agree. Sometimes I'll read things I really don't agree with. I always look into what is going on, right? And
Yeah,
so-
and I'm in a beautiful position because I interview authors and they'll send me their book.
Oh, nice.
That is so cool.
Yeah,
because,
that's really cool.
Sometimes they're fiction, but a lot of time they're like a memoir or whatever like that. It's like, oh, that is so awesome.
Yeah.
How lucky am I? But there's no more where I'm reading 2 or 3 books at a time. It's not happening anymore.
Oh, yeah.
And I feel bad about that, but it's just, you know, my brain is slowed down. Sometimes it's actually broken, but that's the way it is, you know?
When I was a kid, I read so much. I mean, I don't have time for this now, but I would sometimes like read a book, put it down, pick up another book. Like,
I didn't. I remember when I was in grade maybe 3 or 4, we had just a little library at the back of our classroom. Okay, and I read a Nancy Drew book, and it's like I could not relate to anything like that. There was some kind of weird life that didn't relate to my life. You know,
Yeah.
we didn't have a nice family.
Yeah.
Like I didn't grow up in a happy family,
oh, yeah.
whatever. But Beautiful Joe, which was about a dog that was not very pretty. Now that I could relate to. You know?
Right, yeah.
So I stopped reading though, because in our classroom was mostly that type of, you know, we weren't encouraged to go to the public library.
Yeah. Well, I think that you just raised a really good point. Kids need to see themselves
Yes.
in books, like and in our resources and stuff. If you only present books that are based on one type of person, one type of perspective, you lose readers because
Absolutely.
it's not appealing to them. And I find another thing I find really disheartening is the book banners are going after, you know, the latest one I saw was like one about I think addiction that they're going after.
That is so
And
important.
I know, and I'm like, okay, so
Wow.
there are kids dealing with addiction in
Yeah.
our schools. There are kids who have family members dealing with addiction. So these book banners are saying, no, my kid's too precious and fragile to hear about this thing that these other kids are literally dealing with. And I think that's really appalling. I think kids need to feel understood, right? And sometimes, I mean, their teachers aren't necessarily going through the things they're going through.
Yeah.
Their peers, they don't want to talk to their peers about those things because it's embarrassing sometimes, depending on what situation they're in. And then they find a book that finally speaks to them and you want to take that away. think it's terrible.
And then there's that fear on the opposite side, because if you're not teaching them about addiction, whatever like that, the peer pressure can happen.
Yeah.
You know, just try this, just try that. Next thing you know, you've got a child who's an addict.
Yeah.
That's a bigger danger to me.
Yeah.
Right? Non-education, like I think it was on Facebook, I put a comment, like I grew up in an area where, well, in my family anyway, you didn't talk about sex. There was no sex education in our schools, nothing like that. And once when one of my sister had 3 girls, and was my job, so ended up being my job to teach them this, just the simple facts of life. And it was a beautiful book. I can't remember the name of it, written for that age. And as a teenager, all of my friends would be talking about things that I had no clue what they were talking about. And it was just so embarrassing, because I knew I should know.
Yeah.
You know, just simple things that are about sex that I had no clue that. So I'm thinking, teach your kids. It's not going to make them want. That's one of the excuses they use, right? It's going to make them want to go out and have sex or try drugs. And I think you're doing the opposite.
Well, yeah, and we actually know that, because the jurisdictions that have the worst sex education have the highest teen pregnancy rates and the highest STDs. Because kids, if they don't have any information, they get curious. I mean, if you can't find the information anywhere, find it in the real world, I guess.
Exactly. Now we better get back, because we're going to run out of time, because there's so much to cut me off.
Okay.
Because it's done that before. So just let you know, okay, I've been speaking with Willow Reichelt. She is going to be, I got to look at the camera, not at myself. She is rerunning to be on the Chilliwack School Board Trustee. She's there now, and there's a great group of people running, in my opinion. Okay. So you can check out, I guess there's a list that you can look at, find out what they stand for, what they want to do moving forward. And that's the whole point. Let's move forward. Let's bring everybody with us, you know. Just because you didn't grow up hearing about those things doesn't mean that you shouldn't be hearing about them, you know. Never too old to learn these things, right? Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, thank you everybody for watching. I hope you like what you see. And if you like what you see, please share and subscribe, would be really nice. So remember to be nice on that note. And thanks again, Will, for being here. And thanks for watching, everybody. And peace out.
A sense of community, Chilliwack's a place to be. A sense of community where you're free. Rolling through the mountains, rolling through the valley, rolling through paradise with me. It's multicultural, you're sure to see it all. Chilliwack's the place to be, you'll see. Come party in the park, go dancing after dark. Chilliwack's the place to be, you'll see.